presenter in the inaugural session. So it's a wonderful initiative that's taken by the KPC chapter to initiate the Readers Club. Um, so when the idea was introduced, we started something unofficially first, but this is the first official um, platform where we're actually going for a book review, and we'll be having some sort of a discussion on it as well. So the book that I chose is Who Moved My Cheese? And this is a book by Dr. Spencer Johnson, and it's basically on change management. So we know that things change. The only thing which doesn't change, there's no such thing which doesn't change. One thing which is always permanent is change. So let's move to the next slide. Yeah. So nothing endures but change. So changes happen all around us, and we know we have to adapt accordingly. In the current situation as well, you can see that there has been a lot of change. The way that we've been working, that has been shaken up. Uh, Fortunately, for the people who were working in the IT field, remote work was not something which is new. So we had been practicing it on and off, but now we are doing it much more due to the COVID-19 situation. So apparently things change and we need to adapt accordingly. So uh, that's why I selected this book, because this deals with change. Let's go to the next slide. So brief introduction of Dr. Spencer Johnson. So he has a BA degree in psychology from the University of Southern California in 1963. And then he did his MD doctorate. So he's a medical doctor from the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. And after that, he started writing different books. If you can go to the next slide. So he started writing some value series. So the value in different areas, and he wrote a whole series which comprises of more than 20 books. The value series, the value of faith, the value of different things. And then he wrote some books which is the present. Uh, so he talked about the present, why we need to live the present. And then one of the most famous books that he wrote was the 1 Minute Manager with Ken Blanchard. So he was a co-author, and then there were 4 or 5 books which were sort of the offshoots of the 1 Minute Manager. Then we moved on to write the Precious Present, Yes or No, and finally, Who Moved My Cheese? So this was his book, which he wrote in 1998, and there are two separate versions which were written by him. One was written for teenagers, and the other one for kids. So he adapted the same story for teenagers and kids as well. And then Peaks and Valleys, how you move through positive times and negative times, because times always change, and sometimes there are good things which are happening, sometimes bad things are happening. So how do you come out of the bad things, the valleys? How do you capitalize on the peaks? And his last book, which he wrote, was Out of the Maze. So we'll talk about that later. That's sort of a sequel to Who Moved My Cheese. And if I'm invited again, I'll probably present Out of the Maze in my next session. Next slide, please. So these are all the books. You can see the value series in there as well. Value of foresight, value of imagination, value of saving, value of respect. So he wrote these books for children, and most the key factor that you can see for Spencer Johnson is that he always uses simplicity. So all of his books are very simple, very easy to read. And when when I was asked that which book you would like to read, I decided that let's go for Who Moved My Cheese, because it's a very simple book and it's something which we can follow very easily. So let's go to the next slide. And we have some cheese. Yeah, lots of cheese. Okay, so what is cheese, right? And why is it important to us? So apparently, cheese is used as a metaphor in this book, and cheese can be anything that you value. So it could be money, it could be your work, it could be relationships, it could be your home, it could be your health, it could be your freedom, it could be recognition. So whatever you value the most, that is your cheese, right? Can you go to the next slide? So the cheese could be any of these things or anything else that you value most. So if you value your family the most, then that's your cheese. If you value your money the most, then that's your cheese. And it could be a mixture of different things, because it's not necessary that you like just one piece of meal every time. And because if you're a pizza lover and you're given pizza every day, you're probably going to get sick of it one day. So we always need some sort of a variety. And so similarly in life as well, we don't just have one preference, it's a mixture of all of these. So cheese is anything that you value the most, right? So the next slide. Yeah, so if you look at Who Moved My Cheese, the book has three parts to it. The first is a gathering where some high school graduates, they have been going to get some jobs, and then they're coming back, and after they are back, they're having a reunion, and they decide to sit and share their story. So what has happened to them, or how they've been doing well. And in that gathering, one of the guys, his name is Michael, he tells a story, which is the crux of the book, the main part of the book, which is the story itself. And Michael says that he got this idea, he got this story, and when he distributed that story to the throughout the company, he found that his company did a lot better. So the the entire team is intrigued. They want to learn about the story. So the book, the second part, it goes into the story where the Michael is telling what happens in the story, and then after the story, the third part is a discussion where they discuss their situation and they discuss on the story how it relates to them and their situation. So we're not going to go into the gathering and discussion. We're going to discuss the story, and then after discussing the story, what happens, we will sort of have a discussion, and we'll discuss certain points about how things are changing around us. Right. So let's introduce the characters. Right. So next slide, please. So the book comprises of four characters. There are two mice and two little people. So little people are very small people who are almost as small as the mice. The two mice are Sniff and Scurry, and the two little people are Hem and Haw. Now, as we know, mice have a very simple brain. They don't overthink. They don't. They like to keep things simple. And as far as the two little people are concerned, little people have their own minds. They need to analyze things. They have a better developed mind. And all of these four guys, they are living inside a maze. And inside the maze, what they're looking for is they're looking for something which is more important to them. So they're looking for cheese all the time. So they move around the maze every day. They move out of their houses, they move into the maze, they look for some cheese, they find some cheese, they have some cheese, come back to their home, and that's their daily routine, which they do. Next slide, please. So one day what happens is these four guys, they start moving out and into the maze. They venture into the maze, and then they identify a huge cheese station, which we'll call cheese station C. Now, this is a huge cheese station, and they say that, wow, we found what we were looking for. It has an infinite amount of, seemingly infinite amount of cheese, and this is where we're going to stay forever. So every day they would just run over there to cheese station C. They would have their cheese all day, and then they would come back home. And every day they would do that. The little mice, they also did the same things. They would come over every day. They would take off their shoes, put it in their necks, and then they would start having their cheese. The little people, they also did the same. But as time passed, the two little people finally started to say that, well, we have our cheese. We found our cheese. So this is what we wanted to do. This is what we wanted to have. It's already there. So they got a little lazy, and then they started coming a little late. They moved their house closer to cheese station C so that they could get easily, and uh, and they became a little complacent. Now, one thing which one of the characters Haw did was he used to write certain things on the wall. So one thing which he wrote was, "Having cheese makes you happy," because that's what they were. They got all their cheese, they got what they were looking for, and they were all happy. Next slide, please. That was the first thing that they wrote on the wall. Having cheese makes you happy, right? And as they move on, they have their cheese over there. They come every day. They have their cheese, and what they didn't notice was that as they started eating cheese every day, the cheese, the total amount, it started to diminish. And one day when they moved over there, they found that there was no cheese. Now everyone got there. The mice got there first because they were always there on time. So they reached there, sniffed and scurry. They identified that there was no more cheese. So they just moved on. They have a simple brain. They decided that we had some great time at cheese station C, but apparently there's no more cheese left there. So let's just move on and look for new cheese. And they start running off. Sniff is sniffing in the air, looking for new cheese. Scurry is running away, and they start to move in the inside the maze, and they're looking for the cheese. However, Hem and Haw have a different behavior. When they see that there's no cheese, they get angry. They are annoyed. They say that, hey, the more important the cheese is for you, more you want to hold on to it. So we want to hold on to our cheese. Where has the cheese gone? Who moved my cheese? Hence. And so they couldn't find their cheese. But they stayed there and they started to look around. They started to dig around. They said that, well, maybe the cheese is going to come back somehow. So every day they would come over there. They would look that there's no cheese. They would look around. They would just mumble things, and they would fret, and they were getting annoyed that there was no cheese available. So they again, the next writing was, the more important cheese is for you, the more you want to hold on to it. And they wanted to hold on to it. They didn't want to let it go at all. And until finally, Haw has the courage to look at himself, and he says, well, what Einstein has also said, that we're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting new results. We're expecting cheese to somehow come back magically. And that is probably not going to happen. So Haw starts to laugh at himself, and he asks him that, let's go back, let's look for new cheese. But Hem says that, no, I want the same cheese because I know that I like that cheese. I don't know if I'm going to like any other cheese, so I'm not moving. I'm going to stay here, and my cheese is somehow going to come back, and I'm going to find it right over here. So every day, Hem would come to the same place, and he would fret that he has lost his cheese. Meanwhile, Haw decides that finally he has to move on. As he moves on into the maze, he writes that if you do not change, you will become extinct. Right? And this was sort of a message to him as well, that you have to move on, you have to change. And as he moves on, Haw was also afraid. So he wrote, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And these were encouraging words to him as well, because he wanted Hem to join him, but Hem was just not coming. He just decided that, I'm going to stay here, and somebody's going to bring back my cheese. Next slide, please. So Haw wrote, what would you do if you weren't afraid? So Haw moves out into the maze. He's afraid. He doesn't know what to do. He's looking out, and initially, apparently, it's a failure. He doesn't find anything, but then he starts finding small cheese around. He starts picking them up, nibbling them, and he starts liking it. And then Horst starts to reflect. Next slide, please. So he looks back and he says that smell the cheese often so you know when it's getting old. Because he realizes finally that when they were eating the cheese, initially they liked the cheese, they loved everything. But as the cheese got older, the taste was not that good. They didn't like it that much, but still they continued to have it. And why? Because they probably didn't like the change. They didn't want to change. They didn't want anything to do with anything else. So they just, he finally reflected and he said that you need to smell the cheese. You need to evaluate the situation. And as cheese was diminishing, the supply was diminishing. They should have realized that and they should have moved on. So he ventures deeply into the maze and he finally says that he faces the unknown and he says that movement in a new direction helps you find new cheese. As he finds small pieces of cheese and he has them and he starts to get stronger again. Meanwhile, Hem is getting weaker because he doesn't have anything to eat for days and he's going back to cheese station C where he cannot find what he was looking for. And he just frets over there and he's getting weak, but he's still stuck over there. So Haw gets the confidence and he says, when you stop being afraid, you feel good. So finally, he starts to get some confidence as he ventures into the unknown, into the maze. And as he does, he continues to find some new cheese. And as he finds some new cheese, he says that imagining yourself enjoying your new cheese leads you to it. So if you can imagine yourself having some cheese, you're eventually going to get it. So it's about visualizing your goals, what you aim for. If you can visualize it, you're going to get it as well. So some people say that fake it until you make it. So it's a similar thing here, right? So imagining yourself enjoying your new cheese leads you to it. So finally, when he finds the cheese, he takes some of it back and he thinks about him and he says that, wow, this is the cheese. I'm going to take it back to him. And then him is going to join me as well because he's going to see that there is some new cheese available. So he goes back to cheese station C and he goes to him and he asks him that, hey, look, I found a lot of cheese. So why don't you taste this cheese? And Hem says that, no, I don't want to taste that cheese. I want my old cheese. I don't know how this is going to taste. I've been used to cheese station C cheese, and I don't want new cheese. It's not going to taste well. I'm not going to like it. It's going to be uncomfortable. I don't know. So he refuses Haw, and he refuses to go with Haw, and he refuses to go back into the maze to find new cheese. So Haw finally gives up with him and he decides to move out again. And he writes, it is safer to search in a maze than remain in a cheeseless station. This is again another message to him that you're staying at the same place, you're looking at the same situation every day, and you know it's not a good situation, and still you're staying there. It'll be much better to go into the maze rather than just stay over there. So he leaves that message and he moves on. And he finally challenges his own beliefs. He said that old beliefs do not lead you to new cheese. If you continue to believe that your cheese was the only cheese that you needed and that is the only cheese that's going to keep you alive, you're never going to move on. You're never going to find what's new for you, what's better for you. And only if you challenge those beliefs will you be able to venture out, you'll be able to find new things in your life. And obviously, beliefs change your actions. Right? So he finally writes another message, which is when you see that you can find and enjoy new cheese, you change course. So you change course, you identify new ways of doing things, new things that you like, and you move accordingly. And then he does some more reflection and he says that noticing small changes early helps you adapt the bigger changes that are to come. So if he had been identifying that that they were losing cheese, he would probably have ventured into the maze earlier, and he would have probably gotten some more cheese, but he didn't. So, but it was again good reflection on his part. So he moves on and on and on and looks into the cheese until he finds, lo and behold, cheese station N. Cheese station N is bigger than cheese station C. It has a huge supply of cheese, and he finds two of his friends over there as well. The two mice, Sniff and Scurry. They're also at cheese station N. Next slide. So they start to enjoy their cheese and they live over there at cheese station N. That's a new location. And Haw feels bad about him. So he's just hoping that somehow Haw is going to come there and join him. Uh, what he does is finally him decides that whatever he's learned from all of this, he's going to write it on the wall, and he calls it the handwriting on the wall. Next please. So he writes a few things. So the first is change happens. They keep moving the cheese. So your cheese is going to move, and it's going to move continuously, and you need to change accordingly. Right? So change happens, and they keep moving our cheese. The situation is never going to be the same. Yeah, that's right. So things are going to change, and you need to adapt accordingly. So the first, these are the lessons that you learn out of Move My Cheese. The change will happen. You need to anticipate change. So get ready for the change and be ready for it. Continuously monitor the change, adapt, change quickly, and when you need to change, go ahead with it, right? Just let go of your fears, let go of your beliefs. You need to change, you need to change. Just change and enjoy the change, right? So be ready to change quickly and enjoy it again and again. So the last lesson is move with the cheese and enjoy it. And finally, in the maze, what happens is Paul hears some footsteps, and he is just hoping that Hem joins it. He gets to his senses. He's maybe seen the writings on the wall, and he's following him, and he's going to appear over there. So that's where the story ends. And next, what we can do is we can reflect on it, right? So all of us, we are some sort of, we somehow reflect or we represent one of these characters. So we could be very quick to change. We could be sniffing the around, and we could maybe act like Sniff, where we're just sniffing everything and we're ready for a change every time. Or we're scurrying. We're going from one place to another. We do wherever change happens, we're on top of it. Or we could be Hem, where we are just saying that no, we will not change, no matter what happens. Or we could be Haw. We know that we have performed some mistakes. We know that we didn't move on early, but maybe we can do so now. So we can laugh at ourselves. We can reflect and move on and find new cheese. So we have a part of us in all of them, and we can ask ourselves, who do we, which character do we believe we are most likely to be? Are we Hem, who does not want to change and always says that things are not fair to him, and who moved my cheese? The cheese should not have been moved. Or are we Haw, who was initially startled by the change? He finds the cheese station empty, but then he laughs at himself. He reflects, and he's the one who's learned the most out of this story, and he finally decides to move on to find new cheese. Or are we like Sniff, who can smell the change in the air and is ready for action? Or are we like Scurry, who goes into action immediately? And finally, why? right? So the whole story of Who Moved My Cheese is about what would you do if you weren't afraid, and it sort of challenges you into thinking that change is going to happen, change is inevitable, change will happen, and when it does, how will you change? But Dr. Spencer Johnson got a lot of theories, and the most important theory that he got, and the most theories that he got, was regarding uh, the character him. So, did he make it out of the maze? Did he move out of Chief Station C? Did he find Haw and his fellow rats, mice at Chief Station N, or did he just stay over there? Right. So finally, thinking about that, he finally decided to write another book, and that book is Out of the Maze, which he wrote and that was his last year, I believe. He passed away that year. So Out of the Maze is another book which helps you answer those questions. It's more about him and him's belief systems, right? Why did he not want to move? Why was he stuck over there? Why was he stuck at one position? Why didn't he have that energy to just go out, venture more, even though he was really struggling all the time? So because he was a psychologist, he looked at those belief systems and he wrote this book, Out of the Maze, right? So hopefully the next book is going to be Out of the Maze, right? So thank you for the book review. The last part was a discussion where the all the graduates, they came together uh, with Michael, and they talked about what happened in their lives and how that things were changing, and what were the things that they were not doing. So they sort of applied those things onto their own situation. So all of the graduates, they started applying things, and they identified where they could have improved. And these are things that we see in our natural life as well. For example, there have been cases like a lot of devices that we would have seen have gone obsolete. So, like cassettes, like camera rolls, companies that were one of the top companies, like Kodak, which didn't adapt to the change that was happening, digital technology coming over, and they decided that they were going to stick to whatever they liked, like hemp, and they didn't move to the new technologies. And eventually, what happened was they became extinct. Right. Similarly, there have been other cases as well. We can discuss the Nokia case, where Nokia was one of the top mobile providers, and they didn't seek the digital opportunities, and they got left out when smartphones came in. You can see scurry and sniff when you see the Steve Jobs doing a great job with iPhone and iPod. So companies also need to identify changes where they can improve, and they can set their direction accordingly. Situations are not going to be the same. Environment is not going to be the same. Things are going to change. Right now, we're going through a huge change with this COVID-19 situation where we're stuck at home. Now, companies uh, used to discourage working from home because it would reduce your productivity. But that's a new norm now, right? Remote work, people had been professing that for quite some time, and now apparently that's one of the new norm, and it's probably going to stay. So we're going to find ways of working more effectively um, remotely, and there are going to be new tools which are coming in. People are going to identify new ways of doing things, but things will move on. Those who want the same situation to stay there, they're probably going to be extinct, right? So this is a reflection. You guys can share your ideas, your thoughts about where you have seen things are changing and you decided not to change. And for example, one of the cases that Michael discusses, one of his friends, he says that uh, they had a friend and he didn't want to move, and the company was restructuring. They were downsizing, people were being let go, but he kept on working over there because that was his comfort zone, and he just didn't want to look out. So times changed, and finally he got fired, right? So those are situations where we see ourselves as him, who is reluctant to change, who doesn't want to change, and wants to continue in the same way that he has been doing. But we need to adapt to change, and be a bit of awe to reflect things, and sniff and scurry continuously, review situations, and see what's happening.
All right. Thanks, Sohail. I've just mentioned it on the chat window that those who want to participate in the discussion, just write your name or in the chat window, so we will unmute you so you can have in the discussion. So, okay, we are starting sitting the folks. So, yep, Zara, um, I think I just unmute you so you can, I think, have your contribution in the discussion. What you can share your thoughts with us. So, let me just see it here.
Yes, so Zara wrote a message. Many times the thought of fear itself is greater than, and that is true. It's the as Thomas Jefferson also said that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. So sometimes you just don't want to venture out, and that's what happened to Paul as well. But finally, he overcame himself because he came to his senses, and he identified that there was no way that he's going to get anything staying at G Station C. So he decided to finally get some confidence. He started to venture out, explore a bit, and that's what you need to do. So one of the writings was, when you stop being afraid, you feel good. So yes, you're right about that. Sometimes we perceive fear. We know that if we go out of our comfort zone, it's going to be difficult. But that's where the growth is, right? So we need to realize that that's the way to go and find our path.
Right, Zara, you want to say something? You are unmute right now.
I can't hear you, Zara.
Yeah, same here. We can't hear you, Zara.
Maybe you can just write your text and I can respond accordingly.
Hello, can
Right.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes, Zara, we can.
Very quickly, Zara.
was having so thank you for for giving us the gist of the whole parable, and also for sharing your reflections. Very happy to see you here. I have a question and a small experience to share. My experience, and that's why I shared the quotation as well. When I was preparing for my project management professional PMP certification exam back in 2005, even though I had
Mhm.
attended my class, I had been preparing for 2 weeks without any break, I had taken off from work. There was just this fear that kept me, the fear of failure. What happens if I fail in the exam? So that was kind of pulling me down, and that's when I read this thing, that a lot of the times the fear of failure itself is worse than the failure itself, and that somehow gave me the courage and the inspiration. And I remember I used to repeat it to myself: the fear of failure is worse than the fear itself. So, worst case scenario, you fail, you try again. So that was one experience that I had to share. there is one question that has always bothered me, not bothered me, but has kept me thinking. So, how do you decide when to hold on to something and when to let go and move on? Because you can find thousands and thousands of articles and quotations. One says you should not give up and you should keep going at something, and then there are, there is this thing that, you need to know when to just move on and, stop lingering. How do you decide, especially if it's something related to your personal life and where the stakes are high? How do you decide that? I would really love to hear your and other book club members talk. Thank you.
Great, great. So about fear, I think one thing which helped me a lot was something which was mentioned in a book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. By Yeah, so I'll just give you my thought about that book. So that book said that always think about what is the worst which can happen. For example, if you're giving the PMP exam, what is the worst that can happen? You're going to fail, right? So if you fail, what will happen? You probably need to reattempt it. The reattempt fee is a bit lower than the actual fee, and you can set aside that much amount and say that, okay, if I fail, then I fail, but this is the amount I have. I have that reserve. So let me go and make that attempt. So primarily, what you should do is um, you should always look at your values. What is the most important thing for you? And if things are challenging your values, then obviously you don't go for things. But if you feel that they're aligned with the values, with what you want to achieve in your life, what you want to do, then and it's giving you that potential, then think about, always make the positive plan as well as the worst case plan. So what will happen? What is the worst that will happen? So in this case, it's a failure in PMP, and you can always reattempt, and you're probably going to pass anyway. So to overcome this thing, always think about what is the worst that can happen, and that will give you mental ease, and it will relieve your stress a lot. So that's one thing that you can do for how to and stop worrying about the failure. About your second point, so can you repeat your question about the second part that you said?
Yeah, it was, I mean, I just wanted to know your views about, again, the same thing. How do you decide, or that it's time to just move on, or to hold on to something, because that becomes difficult. A PMP exam, okay, the worst thing in my case was that I would lose 400 something or dollars of my own money. That was the investment that I had already made. But there are other life situations where the stakes are high. Do you have your own some personal experiences that you would like to share? Um, how did you decide, when to just move on?
Okay. So when do you decide that you have to change? So the first thing is that you need to set your long-term goals. So if you have your long-term goals set, then you can always see what is aligned with that and what is not. And you need to review those goals periodically as well. So the most important thing is set your goals, right? And then when you have such a step where you have a challenge and you want to know if you should go for it or should you just skip this opportunity, then you should do a cost benefit analysis. What are the pros that you're going to get from it? Is it going to contribute towards your goals? What is the worst that can happen? Always think of that as well. So if the worst can happen is, suppose you're going to lose your job, so how much of an impact will that be? Maybe what you can do is you can build a sustenance income and a backup income and enough amount that can sustain you for 3 months or 6 months, and then maybe you can attempt take that challenge. So it depends upon your situation. If you don't have that financial reserves, then maybe you cannot attempt it. But if you do, then you should go for it. So make that backup plan. What is the worst that can happen? What will happen if you fail? Do you have people dependent on you? So make that plan for the failure plan as well. So if that failure plan is in front of you, it will help you decide whether you should attempt the go for the new opportunity or not. And in my life, there have been a lot of cases where I moved, and it's primarily always been because there's something new to learn, or there's something new that I'm going to do somewhere. So whenever I see that sort of an opportunity, and I'm okay with moving out. When I started my career as a project manager, I was really afraid of changes. And the reason for that was because I had a family to support, and I always worried about what would happen if I lose my job, because I was dependent on just a single source of income. And then I came upon a great guy, Jim Rohn, and I read his books and his talks, and found that there are certain things that I need to do before I can get that ease of mind. And so I built a supplementary income. Apart from that, I got some reserves so that if I got jobless, and I would be able to adjust accordingly. I improved my skill sets. I did my PMP. I did my ACP when I felt that it was required. Um, I recently moved to the US. I thought that the CSM certification would help, so I did that before moving out. So a lot of things you do. You invest in things, and you make your decisions. Moving to the US was a big decision because, again, in Pakistan, I was well set. I had a lot of connections, job stability, everything. But moving to the US was always a big challenge, and I was thinking that moving on, should I actually make that move so late in the career, um, or should I just stay? And finally, I decided that it was probably better for not just for me, but it was going to help my son a lot. So those are things that you always think about, and then make your decision. So think of the positives, think of the negatives, make a plan. What will happen? What's the worst that will happen if you fail? And make sure that everything is aligned with your goals. Make sure that you have your lifetime goals in front of you, and the things that you're going to do are aligned with those goals.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we have one question in the chat window. So in the meantime, actually, no one have asked for unmuting themselves for a discussion. So I'm reading that question. It's from Glam Rasool, and the question is: nowadays, companies fire the employees every day. How to face this situation? And another hand, some companies are hiring the employees on very less package. Even anyone have more than 12 years experience in any field. Please tell us how to face this situation, what measures we have to do for this one also.
Okay, so yes, there are certain unethical things that can also happen when the market is going low. You might not be able to find a good enough job. But remember, you need to evaluate yourself in the market as well. It is very important to identify what you're doing, what the job market is offering. And if you see some opportunities in the job market, you need to adjust accordingly. So, for example, if you're a developer, you might see that data sciences is something that is new, and maybe you can venture into that. The new technologies you can venture into, maybe AI, maybe neural nets, maybe something that is over there where you can make more money. If making money makes you happy, if that's your piece of cheese. So you need to identify what is important to you, and then build your skill set. What will what will help you get paid more? So would a PMP certification help if you're a project manager? Would an ACP certification help? Would new certifications help? Because right now I see that the trend is changing again. The environment is changing. There are lots of jobs which are asking for safe certifications. PMI has launched Discipline Agile, so that's something new. Explore that. Maybe that's going to help you a lot. So identify, if you're not getting a good pay, is there someone else who's going to give you a better pay? And what skill set are they looking for? Always look out for opportunities, continue giving interviews. That's going to help you evaluate yourself, identify what you can do to improve yourself, and having a better skill set will always help you get hired better. And as far as layoffs are concerned, again, there are a few things that you need to do. Set a long-term goal, first of all. Don't be in that hand-to-mouth situation. Ideally, if you can build some reserves, that'll help. If you can have a secondary income, that's going to help. So build those situations until you can find a good enough job. And if you have an idea, try to go for entrepreneurship. Launch your company for yourself.
All right. So in the meantime, I think people will come up with more questions. I have a question, Sohail, to you.
Mhm.
That when you read this book, which character you have relate yourself more? A very honest answer.
The honest answer is that uh, I haven't been sniffing and scurrying as much. So I would say the closest, if you want, then it's probably going to be Hawk, who laughs at himself, reflects, identifies new ways, and moves on. So, and in certain cases, a bit of sniffing as well, it helps. So it's a mixture of both. But if you want one character which I probably relate to the most, it's probably going to be Hawk.
All right. So I have a question from Ms. Anila Farhan, right? And the question is it possible to have more than one character from this parable inside you?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a bit of all the characters inside us because we are reluctant to go. Nobody welcomes change that easily. But if you're a thinker like Hawk, and maybe a bit of, you can do a bit of sniffing and scurrying as well, you can grab more opportunities. So you can have a mixture of all of those characters. Remember, Sniff and Scurry are taking huge risks because they have a very simple brain, and whenever they see a change, they just go for it. They don't need to overanalyze anything. But Haw has that advantage that he can think about the situation, why it's going wild, and maybe he can do something about it. For example, they're at cheese station N right now, and at cheese station N, Scurry and Sniff are going to continue at cheese station N until it ends up. So once that gets drained out, they're going to run away and find something new. But I believe that Haw has learned a lot from his mistake at cheese station C, and he's probably going to start venturing out anyways. He's going to identify new places and if there's anything better that he can do. So he's probably going to do a bit of sniffing and a bit of scurrying in the maze as well. So you can have a mixture of different characters.
Right. I don't know if I'm getting a message of unmuting someone. So just want to see on that side.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. So is there anyone who want to be participative in it? I
Yes,
want
I
to.
do. because apparently nobody else is talking. So I thought that if
So
I
you
have
can
some
take the privilege.
experiences, why not? Um, uh, I want to link this book to or the messages to the current situation. Um, and I think the kind of change that we are facing now, um, pandemics have happened, but the pace of this pandemic, probably we were not even expecting. It is something for which, of course, there is no vaccine, and people were just not prepared. In this kind of a situation, what I have seen is that there are at least two kinds of approaches that people have. Some people are thinking of this opportunity as an opportunity, while others are looking at it as being stuck, not having anything to do, or not being able to do what they used to do. And when will we go back to normal? Um, how do you, the kind of the pace of change that we are seeing on in this pandemic, how do you even sniff it in the initial phases at least? And what are your observations about how the world leaders and the people around us, general public, the people in your own networks, um, have sniffed or at least started to sniff um, the whiffs of the change that was happening and has been happening, and how they are responding? And this question is not necessarily to Suhail Bhai only. This is open to all the book club uh, participants right now, because this is not a one-way Q&A session.
Right, right, right. So first of all, let me talk about the COVID situation, how we can predict such something. So this is something new. There have been pandemics, but probably not so widespread. They were probably isolated to certain regions. But there are sniffs and scurries around us. There used to be Steve Jobs who created certain opportunities out of thin air. Elon Musk is doing a lot of things. Similarly, if you look at Bill Gates' organization, do you know that they did a whole research, a hypothesis? They created a hypothesis that what would happen if such a pandemic broke in the world. It's called Event 201. You can look it up on the internet, and you'll find a lot of videos over there. What they did was they made a simulation uh, of the similar situation that happened in the world, and in that situation, I believe that the pandemic broke out from Brazil, and similar virus that came out, and it started to affect people around the globe. And there were people sitting together, and they were discussing different strategies. World leaders, military people, everyone, the medics, and they did a whole exercise on that. What would happen, and the final outcome was that they weren't ready. Right, so they failed in that exercise, and Bill Gates and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was part of it. The World Economic Forum was part of it. So they did that exercise and they failed. So they were probably already working on things, but I believe that this came a little earlier. Otherwise, they would have probably done certain more measures on this. I believe that the Event 201 took part in October 2019, and in December and January we saw the COVID-19 situation. So we didn't they didn't have a lot of time to prepare for such pandemic, but they were looking at it. Now, once the outbreak started in China, I believe that countries didn't realize the full potential of the impacts that COVID-19 could have. So decisions were delayed. People were reluctant to close things out, close borders. So it slowed down the situation, the response. And as far as now the organizations go, yes, some organizations are just wanting to go back to their old situation. They want the offices to be open so that they can work effectively, and they're saying that remote work doesn't work, and probably it doesn't because they don't have that infrastructure to support them. But there are companies which are already working remotely, and a lot of organizations have found this to be an opportunity, because now you can reach more people with through social networking, through uh, the internet. So, for example, if you used to have PMP classes at Karachi chapter, so we were isolated to people who were physically there, who would attend our classes. But now we're opening it up. We're thinking about how we can open PMP programs for people around the world. So we are looking at it as an opportunity as well. So there are always both things. You need to look at the positives. How what are the opportunities that can be created, and then there are people who are not encashing it, and obviously they might become extinct.
All right. So just want to know anyone who want to speak up, because we have unmuted I think few people, but no one have spoken, so I just unmute them out again. Okay. So I think with this note, we are coming to an end for this first, I think, session of this book club, because it was an hour. So thank you so much, Sohail, right, for inaugurating our book club, right, our KPC Readers Club, and hopefully this is going to be the regular initiative, right, and we're going to meet every month with the readers who are interested, and soon we're going to announce our next book. So hopefully this one was on a short interval, and I'm very happy, and thank you so much that all of you have participated in it. But from now onwards, right, we will try that we're gonna announce at least 2 weeks back, so people would get ample time to read the book, and then we will going to talk about it, and we can discuss those books here, right? So thank you so much once again, Sohail, because the first episode, a very long awaited, I think, discussion that we have to have this book club in our chapter. And now finally we are on, and we're gonna continue this practice, and going to share our experiences, our learnings, our knowledge with our fellow members, our peers, and hopefully we're all going to enjoy it. I hope. Thank you so much, Sohail, once again for your time, for knowledge, for sharing with us, and thanks everyone for being here, for giving your time, right? And if you have any suggestions, any feedback that which books we should discuss, and if anyone among you want to discuss any book, do let us know, drop us a line, and we're gonna definitely get back to you on it. And once again, on behalf of PMI Karachi Pakistan chapter, thank you for joining us. Thank you. We were going to share this PowerPoint presentation, and this recording with each one of you is going to be uploaded on our website soon. So you can reach our website for all the content of the webinars we are having, and you can access the recordings, their PowerPoint presentations over there for future reference. Thank you. Thank you, Sohail, for joining us, and thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks. Bye.